Hello, everybody, and welcome to the January 2022 edition of IT Documentations Users Group, lovingly called IT Doug. Uh, for those of you who may be tuning into many of the various broadcast channels we have going on right now, IT Doug is a Facebook users group. It's peer-to-peer, so feel free to log on to fb.com/groups/IT Doug and join the action and help your peers answer and IT documentation related questions or ask your own. IT Doug was founded in 2018 by Tracy Harton, an MSP called Next Century Technologies out of Kentucky. She invited myself to become a co-admin of this group later that year. It originally started off as an IT glue, peer-to-peer help, because there wasn't a lot of knowledge base at the time. And we have since decided to expand that out to all IT documentation platforms, users, and needs. I remember the days watching the 100s roll past. Hey, 100 users, 200 members. Hey, 500 members. And we are now nearing 4,000 members. So thank you for all that you do in helping each other. Our activity levels are growing well. You guys are helping each other. You guys and gals are helping each other. And we love to see it. And we weigh in where we can. So today's topic is going to be cloud security. We're calling it an advanced level cloud security 301. Advanced tools for better security and compliance. I do not purport to be a security expert, which is why I have asked Tenacity Cloud to help me present this content. I'm going to have just as many questions as you guys do. And in all the platforms, wherever you can watch this at, if you leave a comment, it should show up. It might be a little delayed. We would love to have you participate, ask questions. We can work them in to today's broadcast. Now, Tenacity's cloud involvement, besides all this great knowledge, is letting us borrow Jason Yaeger. Jason is an industry veteran with an entrepreneurial drive and a bias for action. He grew an infrastructure as a service, IaaS, data center company with cloud and managed services. A champion of action-oriented leadership after my own heart, and he has an emphatic conviction that success is created when organizational culture deliberately empowers everyone to make and implement decisions in the fastest way possible. Jason, I couldn't agree more. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
Could you give me the 30 seconds about how you landed at Tenacity Cloud, what you guys do, and then we can get into the content?
Yeah. You mentioned my background in cloud infrastructure and cloud security. Spent my entire career helping companies, primarily in the healthcare and financial services space, deploy technology in a secure fashion that would meet compliance. So, that spanned from private cloud infrastructure way back in the day now to obviously public cloud infrastructure like AWS and Azure, but helping companies solve problems and mitigating security breaches or data breaches, as well as making sure that they're spending what they should, has been a passion of mine for many years. And, help thousands of customers achieve what they need to achieve from a business perspective there. So that's how we landed on Tenacity. My partner and I, Nick, ended up leaving the last company we were working for, infrastructure as a service company, because we wanted to focus on public cloud and the security around public cloud. And that was the divergent from the last organization we were at. And, through many different conversations, hundreds of conversations and user research, market research, we landed on Tenacity as where we wanted to go, because we saw a huge gap in the market and what companies were needing to do, the problems they needed to solve, and the tools and processes that were out there to help them, which we'll get into a little bit.
Very good. I sold my MSP back in 2011, and a lot has changed in the last 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, security was always a thing you had to do, and there was hacks and viruses, but the landscape has changed so much, and I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate that I get to watch this through the lens of our clients and help them through those challenges and understand the tools and the concerns and the options. But I am so thankful that I don't have to deal with this directly these days. I mean, we even hire an IT company, even though most of us have that experience, to handle all of these growing constant concerns. So what are these advanced tools?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about it. So we talked a little bit about Tenacity already, but what Tenacity helps companies solve, and this is what we're going to focus on today from a cloud security perspective, is, we give our customers a really easy to use, simple view into their posture from a security perspective in their cloud environments, how they're tracking towards compliance, what do they have deployed across all their providers, regions, subscriptions, all of that in one simple view. And we also show them ways in which they can save money and where their money is going, which is really important to the business, but but in some cases to the infrastructure technical people deploying. They don't really know how the decisions they make on a daily basis are affecting security and budgeting. And so we give our users, our customers, the ability to see those things in real time. We give them ways in which they can remediate it to improve their security posture and mitigate data breaches. So that's a little bit about what Tenacity does. And let's talk about kind of the problems that are out there. As you can imagine, from a cost perspective specifically, and we'll talk about security as well, but these two things play together. And I can give you an example of why.
Please do.
If I have, which is very common in cloud infrastructure, if I have a bunch of resources deployed that I'm no longer using, and if I'm no longer using them and I'm paying for them and they're still out there, that means I'm probably not taking a look at how they're secure, right? And anything you have deployed in your environment could be a potential attack vector, especially those things you don't know about, right? So cost does play a component, or identifying where you have abandoned resources does play a component in security, which is why we provide that full, the full service offering there. But if you look at what these companies have to offer, they give you tools to help you be more secure, to help you be more compliant, to save money. They just don't make it very easy to utilize those things for many different reasons. But one is, if you take AWS or Azure as an example, those tools and interfaces are designed for technical people, developers in many cases. And so they're not really easy to use if I'm a company that can't afford the talent that it takes to manage those tools properly. So if you look at the AWS API or Management Console, CLI, whatever you're using, it is not easy to get a one-shot view of everything I have, which is crazy. But everything I have, how it's performing from a security perspective, and then also give the business back the tools it needs to understand how they're performing to that. These are very technical tools that AWS and Azure have built into their infrastructure. So we try to cut through that. We don't try, we do. We cut through all that. We give a very simple view because we want everyone to be able to utilize, to have a secure operating environment, as well as cost neutral as well. So, and then if you look at we hear this all the time, right? From different companies out there providing similar solutions or helping customers do that, is they become alerting engines. And if there's one thing that anyone in the IT industry doesn't need more of, it's a bunch of alert fatigue, right? So, so if you look at, they're complex to use, they require lots of training and more than likely multiple people to manage. And they just give you a bunch of different alerts, and it turns into alert fatigue and an alert overload.
Right.
So that's where they are. Go ahead.
This just reminds me, thinking I was all that as a technician, and just 2 years ago, I was trying to set up a remote desktop, a virtual machine that we could remote into for a common purpose. And I was like, oh, I have Azure credits with our partner level. Let me just go use those. And first of all, it was far more complicated than I anticipated. I had to create some sort of VPN connection. I had to create storage. I had to create the virtual machine itself. And then, we stopped using it. And then I kept getting bills for like 8 different pieces. I didn't even know what they were.
Right.
And that's just me trying to create one machine. I can't imagine if I even maybe still have something turned on that I'm paying for, or is it an attack vector?
I mean, in your target, that's one, right? We have companies that have hundreds of thousands of resources deployed in public cloud infrastructure, right? So imagine that on a scale of 100,000. The problem has expanded. I mean, as you recall, you sold your company in 2011, right? Now, back then, most IT infrastructure was deployed internally in your own data center, or in a co-location facility, or even in the closet in your office, right? And then you had a small group, if not just one or two people, that had the ability to inflict change in that environment. Well, that's no longer the case when you're talking about public cloud infrastructure. We've gone from small internal teams that have access to inflict change in these environments to dozens or hundreds of different types of people with the ability to do this, because that's what public cloud gives you. It gives you the flexibility to do things at a rapid pace, to be super agile when it comes to developing things for your customers and improving experiences for your users, whoever they may be, internal or external. But the price to that is that you have more hands in the cookie jar, right? Deploying things. And not everybody that's doing this knows exactly how these things should be configured from a security perspective. And the part of the problem is everybody's focused, a lot of people are focused on the most visible issues when it comes to security, right? So how do I prevent hackers from Russia or China from getting into my application, right? And so there's all these complex tools that are deployed to learn when those people are trying to attack you or coming into your infrastructure. When at the end of the day, 2/3 of all cloud breaches come from just not configuring the services correctly. And so if you just start there, you're gonna really mitigate a huge piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, I know even a few years ago, every time I would see a cryptoware attack, it was almost always some piece of infrastructure that was forgotten about or ignored.
Yes.
An RDS server, whether cloud-based or premise-based, that everyone forgot about.
An open S3 bucket, a storage bucket open to the public, whether that's Azure Blob or AWS S3. That's a common one. And it doesn't matter what size you are, you're susceptible to these. I think just a month or two ago, Capital One had a data breach, and it was a S3 bucket that was left open to the public. That's it. I mean, it's that easy. And they probably have thousands of S3 buckets. Imagine that problem for an organization that's not Capital One, that can't afford a dedicated security team to make sure that these things are being done. And that's where the market needs to go, to make these things easier for companies to use, implement, and get a grasp on where their security is, from not only just keeping bad actors out or preventing data breaches, but also to make sure, one of the other risks to a business is financial, right? I mean, financial risk is huge. And a lot of people, I'm sure everybody that's listening in right now has heard about complaints about spend in the public cloud, right? Well, 30% of all spend in the public cloud is waste. I think the actual dollar figure from last year was something about $30 billion was spent on cloud infrastructure to AWS, Azure, GCP, and a litany of other smaller ones. That was just waste.
Yeah, and I've seen some great business models where managed service providers started reselling the application hosting in the cloud because they could, shave 10% off whatever anybody else would charge them going direct, but then they knew how to make it more efficient by 20, 30% building in margin for themselves. And it was a win-win solution.
Absolutely. And that's what we try to do. We want to deliver that. And that's why we implemented, that's why we integrated cost into it, not only from that security perspective, but how powerful is it if I can make sure that my infrastructure is configured properly, I can eliminate the vulnerabilities I have in there, and also it pays for itself? Because I would say 95% of the companies that work with us, when we first, deployed them as a customer, we found somewhere between 15 and 30% of annual savings for them.
Wow.
So if I can be secure and have it pay for itself, that's a pretty good deal, right?
Very cool.
So some of the other problems in this industry, and this happens everywhere, right? Because companies, especially in developing markets like cloud security, from a marketing perspective, these companies just come up with these like little acronyms that, or abbreviations, right? So CSPM and CCM and CASB and CWPP and SASE and CMP, all these different things, right? And they don't mean anything to a user, to the person that's trying to solve a problem, right? I mean, I could list 5 different ones that our platform could align to here. It's become too difficult to figure out exactly what I need and which one of these is going to solve my problem. So the industry itself has caused a lot of this confusion, which is why every single year the same problems exist in the public cloud, AWS, Azure, and GCP that existed the year before. It's because it's really confusing, and nobody makes it easy for me to gain an understanding of where I sit from a security, cost, and compliance perspective. And so there are ways to solve this, right? First of all, ignore all this crap, right? And focus on focus on the problem that you have, right? How can I solve it? Right? Go ahead.
I just can't look away. I keep looking for remodulate flux capacitors, but
right. I'm sure. Listen, Riley's listening in. She's on our marketing team. I'm sure she can come up with a great acronym or abbreviation that we could start to own from a marketing perspective, right? But you know, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is help what everyone's trying to do is have a more secure environment that's going to mitigate data breaches and a litany of other things. So, and I don't want to have to go buy 5 or 6 different tools here to go solve a problem that I'm having, which is really what you have to do today. You have to go buy multiple products here. And it just depends on where you are. So really we've caused confusion. When I say we, the cloud security industry has caused confusion, which has basically caused a lot of companies, especially in the mid-market where they don't have the resources available to go and hire a lot of this talent. It's just causing them to procrastinate on the issue, right? It's like, well, I don't know exactly how to solve this, and nothing's happening right now, so let's just let it go, right? Let's let sleeping dogs lie.
Yep, it's good till it's not.
It's good till it's not. And then, because of all of this, it's becoming increasingly hard to even get insurance, cyber insurance nowadays. I mean, I remember, I don't know if you had it 10 years ago, Alan, but I've had to go, acquire different cyber insurance policies over the years for Tenacity, for companies in the past. And it used to be a checkbox. You could get $1 million cyber insurance policy basically if you were breathing, if your company had, whatever, $1 in revenue. And what we're seeing now is those companies are a lot of companies are just being denied. In fact, we work a lot in the insurance industry, and it's becoming a major issue. And that's because the premiums paid, if you look at the industry as a whole, premiums paid on cyber liability insurance, data breach insurance, are lower than the payouts. So all the premiums gathered do not equal the amount that the insurance companies are having to pay out now.
My form went from 1 page 2 or 3 years ago to, I think it was 3 forms and about 25 pages this year, and premiums tripled. And that was because the first carrier got out of the business and there was a new carrier.
Yes. And that's happening. We're hearing industry wide. It is becoming increasingly more difficult. And what happens when you implement solutions like Tenacity or like a lot of these others is you get to use that when you talk to the insurance company to show them how you're mitigating this problem, which not only reduces your insurance premiums, but also puts you in a better position to even get the insurance nowadays. So the problems are exacerbating, right, across the board. Hey, all right, there we go. So, there's lots of tools out there. We talked about the acronym soup here, but, there's endpoint security. An example would be CrowdStrike, right? So these are pieces of software that get deployed on individual laptops or instances of operating systems, and they help you protect those resources on an individual basis. You have triage tools like Ranked Right, which allows you to automate and prioritize vulnerabilities, especially for large organizations. You're looking at hundreds or thousands of vulnerabilities, and it's really hard to kind of figure out which ones I should focus on first. And that's from an IT-wide perspective, not just cloud. You have SIM tools like Blumera that help you analyze logging. And these are all things that help you gain a better security understanding of your
And
environment.
these are all different layers too, of different ways of looking at the same problem, and you have to shine a light from all the angles to get rid of the shadows.
Yeah, and outside of ranked right, at least on this list, or these triage tools, SIM tools and endpoint security tools are basically alerting engines. I mean, they're something happens, I get alerted, and if I get too many of those alerts from an IT team, especially too many false positives, what happens with those alerts? They start to get ignored. You've been right? I mean, you were in this industry as well.
That's not what my process says.
What?
My process says they go into your continuous improvement meeting to reduce that noise.
Right, to reduce that noise, right. And so you're looking at we're inundated with these tools right now: log aggregation, alerting on different logs, endpoint security. You've got identity access management, something like Okta. You've got security from containerization perspective. You've got there's no shortage of things that you can focus on from not just a IT security perspective, but just an IT perspective. And where do I start? Right? Well, which one of these is going to give me the biggest bang for my buck? Right? And I don't know if anybody else has a problem like this on the call, or if you've experienced it, but where would you start, Alan, if you had like this? Where would you focus first?
Well, yeah, it's like you said with the acronym soup. Honestly, I tend to look at this and go, you know what? I'm making more money somewhere else. I'll ignore it for a while longer. That would be my first instinct.
Right.
And beyond that, my starting point, if I had to choose one, is like, which one can I most simply understand first?
There you go. Right. And the 80-20 rule, man, it might be in effect too, right? Which one is going to handle 80% of my problems, right?
Right.
And there are tools out there that do that, or there are areas in where you can focus that provide you the 80-20. And there are tools that can help you in those areas to focus, because you can do all of this can be done manually. You can go find an open source piece of software if you want. You can go, figure out how to do it command line, or go spend countless hours and getting your certifications into different providers to become better at what you're doing. But those aren't solutions to a problem. They are down the road, but it's kind of a barrier. It's going to cause you to go to the next lowest common denominator, right?
Yeah, and half of these things that you've mentioned, both in the tool and even the threat, I didn't even know was a thing.
Right.
I mean, I see it and I go, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm not in the security space, and I'm like, wow, there's so much to think of. What if I had attempted to do this on my own?
Like, what are you supposed to do from a logging perspective, right? Like, companies generate thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of logs on a daily basis, right?
We're getting better at generating them.
That don't have a full team to do that with. What am I supposed to do with that? And you need it for any sort of compliance. Mm-hmm. Centralized log aggregation and some sort of tool to alert you on issues in your logs. Everyone needs that. It's not easy to implement things like that, and it's not easy to understand where you need to focus. So what the problem that we help companies solve is really where a large part of cloud data breaches are focused, right? 66% of all cloud breaches are a result of misconfigured services. So 2/3 can be mitigated just by understanding how you've configured your cloud infrastructure and making sure that it's configured securely.
Sounds so simple.
It is. Obviously, that will change over time, right? The more people that implement this, the less that number will be. But right now, in fact, this just came out in the latest IBM State of the Whatever report. The average cost of a data breach that came from a result of cloud misconfigurations was about $4 million. That's a big number, right? So just understanding how you have your workloads configured and making sure that you eliminate those vulnerabilities or violations will save you a lot of money in the long run, will save you a lot of heartache, and not to mention will save the negative impact that we have from a market perspective, right? It's not great to be in the news because you had your customers' personally identifiable information breached, right?
I've met a couple of MSPs now who have been through that. Most of them, by the way, are actually doing better than ever because of it, but they also had the worst year of their life, suffering personally as well as financially and in their business. But they got through it and they figured this stuff out and made sure it didn't happen again. I do want to remind you for all those watching, you are welcome to comment whichever platform you are seeing this on. We would love your feedback. We will try to work in your questions as we go, and if not, we'll get them at the end. So feel free to keep commenting. Thank you for those who have done so far.
Yeah, so we've kind of talked about this, so I won't beat a dead horse here, but what we focus on, basically, Tenacity helps our customers answer a few questions. One is, what do I have? Which is, anybody that's accustomed to either Azure or AWS knows, knowing what you have across all your accounts, regions, subscriptions is not an easy task.
And it's the basics of documentation.
There you go. Work it back to IT Doug. It's the basics of documentation. So we provide our customers with a view that shows them everything they have deployed, where it's located, all that stuff. So it serves as a great asset management system. And that's really the foundation. We have to know everything you have so that we can tell you if it's secure, so that we can tell you if it meets compliance. So we're going to answer, is it secure? Am I going to meet compliance? We're going to answer for you, how much am I spending on all this stuff? Like, what is my production workloads? What do they cost me? We show you that. So we give you deep insights into what you're paying, where it's going. And we also show you where you have stuff that you're not using and ways to save money from some of the provider-based savings plans that they offer you, but they don't make it very easy for you to use, because if we go back to the how much of cloud is waste every year, it's a perverse incentive for them. The more they tell you how to save, the less revenue they're going to get. That's just the fact of the situation. And we try to help you actually save money and give you contextual information so that you can select the right plan and remove the right resources that you don't need to have.
So you're listing tool number 7 as Tenacity Cloud. Do you need all 7 tools to be the most secure that you can be?
No, I think we just numbered them.
Okay.
But here's the thing. What you need is highly dependent on your business, right? Everyone should have what we provide, but there are other things that there are other problems out there that we don't solve, that other tools are very valuable in helping you solve. And so the first is to understand the problem. What am I trying to solve, right? We can tell you what we solve, but it's hard, so if I'm a company that needs to adhere to NIST 853, you're probably going to need every tool in the repertoire to meet FedRAMP or some sort of a CMMC government-related security framework, right? If I'm a company that just needs HIPAA, I don't need as much. I need encryption, I need user management, and I might need, some sort of offsite replications. So it's really user dependent. There is a case where you need more than Tenacity, though, because we provide, basically all the security around your cloud infrastructure and cost. But if you need endpoint security, we don't provide laptop endpoint security. It's just not something we do. So a lot of companies will need something like that.
Adam has a comment for us. Hi, Adam. He works with us. But he was curious, you're mentioning specific types of compliance, and are there like specific compliance checkbox that Tenacity has?
Yes, there are at least a dozen of them, and I'm sure Riley can post them all in the chat or somewhere, but I'll list off a few. NIST 853, 800-171, NIST Cybersecurity Framework, SOC 2, HIPAA, PCI, and more. And we'll post them in the chat. Hopefully
Sounds
she's
great.
listening in.
I remember Veronica, our chief marketing officer, mentioned after our last call, man, I wish we would broadcast the dry runs because I asked better questions.
Hey, we could do that next time.
Maybe so. Then again, I also am far less polished and I need to comb my hair better. So the tool, what you're proposing is the solution, actually doesn't change anything about your cloud infrastructure. It is simply a documentation and identification tool. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah. So we by default we have read only access to a customer's environment. And we do and we do that for a couple of reasons. But one is, the more access that other users, companies, people have, the less secure you can be. The less secure you are. Sorry.
Mhm.
So we don't inflict change in an environment, but we tell you when you have problems, and we give you guided steps to remediate them. And then what we do is we have a number of partners that we work with, from similar to what you did from an MSP perspective 10 years ago, but more specific to cloud infrastructure like AWS and Azure. What we do is we give, if a company we see really doesn't have the right staff or tools in place to be able to go remediate these things, we have a partner network in which we refer them to, for partners to come in and help them remediate those things, and even provide some ongoing managed services. And we've done that for a number of companies. It works out very well.
So if I'm a relatively immature in the security space, but I have this rock solid managed service business I'm trying to get into, I could use a tool like this and have a much more clear understanding of what I don't know, with at least access and pointers on how to get there, how to get that
Correct.
knowledge, how to get that vendor, how to get that labor done, or what to go Google to figure out what to do next. I know somebody's laughing at me for saying Googling stuff about security.
I don't know why they'd be laughing at me. Like, Google is the best tool for learning things. As long as you know how to ask a question, it's better to ask it in Google than Facebook.
I think the difference in an amateur technician and a professional technician is a professional technician knows which Google articles to trust.
Yeah, I would say the difference between the two is how good their Google game is.
What is your Google foo belt?
Yeah, but yes, I've said that many times. If your Google game is strong, you probably can figure out all these things. It just takes a lot of time. And if you can work with a company that does it on a daily basis, and they can provide you a solution that's cost neutral, why wouldn't you go that way?
Now, so you also mentioned cost savings, and obviously for huge enterprises, large managed service providers, I absolutely could see, oh wow, this is a must-have type of thing I have to do. And I'm curious though, is this tool also for the small players? If I'm a 5-person managed service provider and I'm trying to keep my clients secure, can I use this tool? Is there an ROI?
Yeah, we absolutely have ROI so first off, we have plans that span all the way from a free plan, if your spend is low in public cloud, to enterprise plans for companies that are more mature. So we have plans that cover a wide range of budgets and maturity level in cloud infrastructure. So we have that covered. And we say that, like, when you start to really incur costs that you shouldn't have, as well as you start to get into a size environment where it's very difficult to manage. Like, if you just have one resource, not that big of a deal, like you mentioned with your Bastion host that you spun up. But once you hit about 150,000 in annual recurring costs in the public cloud, you're definitely going to have waste, and you're most likely going to have a number of violations or vulnerabilities with how you've configured your services, because you're looking at hundreds of different things or widgets, as opposed to dozens of different things. So minimum of 150,000 in spend is really where you start to see the return on investment. But the way we've outlined our pricing structure, we've made it very easy for companies that are even spending less to acquire our tool and get value from it, no matter where they are in that spectrum.
So speaking of value, do you have specific advice on how we could use the Tenacity tool to generate value? Does that make our services more valuable? Does it reduce our cost? How does that work?
So partners, we do have partners, managed service providers that utilize our platform. The problem that a number of these providers were trying to solve is it's difficult to provide managed services on public cloud infrastructure, because it's not the same as it was back then when I manage a server for you, right? It's just different because there's not just servers, there's, serverless things and access, IAM access. There's just a whole litany of other services that could come into play. And so what our partners utilize our platform to do is, one, it helps them sell their managed service offering in the public cloud, because they now have they can now give their customers a view into everything that they have and everything that they're doing for their customers. It shows them how they're tracking towards cost, right? Optimization of their environment. It shows them where their vulnerabilities are, how they're tracking to compliance. So it provides stickiness from a product perspective on a managed service offering. The other thing that it almost completely eliminates for our partners is what used to take days to weeks of discovery on what companies had out there deployed and how they were configured has now gone down to hours.
Very nice. Any questions you wish I would have asked, Jason?
You know what? I don't know. No. Sorry, I'm in like a mode here, but I tell you what, we've got people on the call. Like we've got, I know we've got a couple people from Tenacity, and we've got Riley. So if they have some questions, they can throw something in there, but
sure,
I think we covered it.
I realized that the way I asked that question was also perhaps the most complicated way I could have worded that, which is why my book's taking so long to write. It's I like complex speech. I don't know why.
Well, writing books is not easy.
Apparently not. Who'd have thought a 100-pager takes so long? Giving everybody one moment to put in some last comments before we move on to some other suggestions.
Are we
Jason,
in our green room chat, that's in the chat?
I was about to say, Jason, if you want to.
Is somebody spamming us with URLs that we should not go to?
I think it's just Riley. We actually got that into the YouTube chat, at least, a list of compliance acronyms that you guys are currently supporting, with more to come. You want to read that all for us?
Sure. GDPR, HIPAA, SOC 2, PCI, NIST 853, NIST 800-171, NIST CSF, AWS Foundational Technical Review, ISO 27001, and CIS benchmarks. We are also implementing, because a number of customers have asked this, custom frameworks, so companies can actually create their own framework that they can adhere to, because we found that.
Right, and we had a question: do you do auto remediation? And I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but why not?
We don't do auto remediation. I think Riley posted a nice blog in there, because that gives Tenacity the ability to inflict any sort of change in your environment. So right now, it's not to say this won't change as part of an additional offering for companies that want to do that. So right now we focus on showing you where you have your issues and giving you guided remediation steps on how to resolve those. And if you need additional help, we have a full partner network of companies that are very capable of helping our customers resolve these issues and provide them ongoing managed services as well.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add before we do our little wrap up for IT, Doug?
Only this has been great. It's been really fun. Really appreciate this, Alan. It's been a great forum, and I love getting on and talking about stuff like this. So anytime you guys want to guest back, we've got plenty of people internally, not only myself, and we can help you out with that stuff.
Awesome, Jason. Thank you so much for being here. I learned a lot, both in this call and our dry run call, and I love doing that. So we have just one more slide or two to show some dates about IT, Doug, and a couple of cool announcements coming up. So first off, we have the next two IT Doug webinars planned February 23rd. The V-Screening Matchmaking. V-Screening is it's a name for a service that we have, but it's about the screening and hiring process. And I know Veronica and Brooke, who runs our V-Screening, is super excited to have a fun February related event, and we're going to try to add a little more I guess fun's the right word, a little more fun into the presentation, a little more interactivity as well. And then coming up March 30, we're going to be hosting Evolve Manage. keep posting and looking at IT Dog for more announcements about that. However, before we adjourn, I would like to introduce our community manager, Sri. So Sri's working on pushing the right buttons to show up on the screen as well. But before I officially pass the torch to Sri, props to Veronica, our Chief Marketing Officer. She's been maintaining the communities up until recently. Her plate runneth over, to mix metaphors. And we brought Sri on to help us with a few tasks, primarily of which is running our communities, including IT Doug. I just wanted Sri to say hi. You're welcome to weigh in and speak, Sri, or I'll keep talking forever, as you know. There are changes coming to IT Doug. First and foremost, Sri's been working in the background over the last few months, and I've noticed that the number of you posting and actually getting help in IT Doug is finally hit what I call critical mass, where there's no day that goes by that something isn't happening. I'm glad that's working out for you, and I hope you're getting the answers and help that you need and enjoying the community. It's a big part thanks to Sri getting that activity going. If you have suggestions, ideas, challenges, feel free to post them or private message Eureka Process or find Sri in the group. He's here to help and to make sure that we always have time to help while we're are also doing our daytime jobs with consulting clients on process and strategy. Now, Sri, you wanted me to use the word hitherto, and we laughed about that. We do hope to have, while we've had a wide range of topics in the past, mainly because there's so many different people who belong to IT Doug. It's not just IT service providers. It's not just managed service providers. It's been students learning how to document their code, and we don't mind helping them all. But starting in Q2, so in April, we are going to try to get our webinars to focus much more on documentation specifically. We've had great responses in both ways, but we wanted to send a more clear focus. And Sri, I'll let you talk about some of the ideas you had for webinars, such as with key tools and platforms. And I heard a lot of versus bloody bath fights and such coming up.
Thank you, Alan. It's great to be here and say hi to everyone. It's definitely seen a lot more activity. I've definitely seen a lot more activity on IT Doug, especially leading up to the holidays last year, and then over the first few weeks of this year. There's a lot more people coming in. Again, like Alan mentioned, they're from different industries, different verticals. Most of them are from IT specifically, but then people who might have a completely different role, but one of their functions happens to be IT documentation. So they look for a resource, they happen upon the IT documentation users group, and they decide to join. A lot of questions from all over the board, ranging from, how I have a blank slate, how do I get started with this, to very specific questions about having used a tool all their life and should they be switching. So a lot of these conversations always end up in should I do A versus B, and conversations about how one is better than the other, and there's always champions for everyone. So we thought it would be a good idea to talk about some of the existing tools, just to throw some names out there like IT Glue or Hoodoo or LineGuard, and for different purposes. But talk about them, see what's new, see what people's best practices or tips and tricks are, and also have sort of pitching them against each other, sort of a competition to see how one is better or not against the other in different respects. So definitely going to stay very close to documentation for this year and in the near future.
Sounds great. Cerise, thank you for all you're doing and getting us to where we are today. Jason, thanks again for providing such valuable content. I learned a ton.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Sri.
And I look forward to seeing everybody in IT Doug in the days to come. And worst case, see you February 23rd for the matchmaking episode.